Hey, everybody. This week I've got Johnny Stewart on the podcast. If you know whitetail, you know Johnny. He is on the pro staff for Osseo Gear as well as Spartan Forge. Johnny lives in PA and hunts the PA Hill Country, plateaus of PA, but he also travel hunts a lot. If you watch his YouTube channel, which I'll put all of his links in the show notes for his Instagram, his YouTube channel. But if you watch his stuff, you know he hunted everywhere from North Dakota to Ohio to Illinois, as well as home last year. So he's all over the place. Primarily a bow hunter. He gun hunts too, but he's a big bow hunter. And we did a lot of conversation around, again, travel hunting. This is something that a lot of people are really, really into. And what I'm trying to do is create content that provides information for all of you, no matter what kind of terrain you are hunting. So we talked about some of his scouting techniques. He's a really active scouter during the season as well as off season. We talked about some of his hunting techniques in terms of strategies in his home state of PA, but we also talked about tips around hunting the Midwestern states in ag country. We talked about tips around hunting timber country, hunting the hill country in PA, as well as the plateau areas of PA. So there should be something in here for every one of you, no matter where you live, how you're hunting whitetail. And if you're traveling, this will give you a lot of good information on where to start in terms of your scouting prior to taking the trip, as well as what to do when your boots hit the ground that first couple of days when you land wherever you're going. So I hope this helps. Enjoy the conversation with Johnny. Again, if you are on YouTube, give me a like, put a comment in there for me, subscribe. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple and can like the podcast and leave a comment, that helps people find it. I know that your time is limited and that you can listen to a lot of different content. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Enjoy the podcast with Johnny. Johnny Stewart, welcome to the podcast, brother. Appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, I'm excited about having you here. So one of the things that I'm doing at the beginning of the podcast for this first couple of months here is I'm asking everybody the same question, which is, as you come out of last season, I know you travel a lot, but as you came out of last season and thought about, kind of looking back, and I know you've been doing this for a long time, as you evaluate going into 2025, is there anything that you either learned, things that you tried that you did more of that were, newer, or anything that you look back, you're like, I'm going to do more of that next year, or I really learned a lot from this last year. I'm going to make sure I apply that to next year. Anything that you may be focusing on as you head into 2025 that you brought out of 2024?
Yeah, definitely. I every year I learn something, and in the Spartan Forge app, I always update my journal every time I hunt. Then, like after maybe a 4-day hunt, I'll put a note in there like I need to do this, be better at this, and then I have that to look at for the following year here because you think you remember stuff, but I don't know if it's you get older or whatever, but you tend to forget things. Get tied up in other stuff. But I think definitely that's important to do. Just little things like even be quiet or getting in a tree. I think most of my hunting is within 200 yards of a bedded mature deer. So that's one thing. All since this is my second year like mobile hunting, especially with a camera guy, it's a different. It's different than just being by yourself. So you have two guys there trying to get in a tree, get set up. So definitely be quieter and maybe have a set already up, which is hard. I feel like I'm always mobile, the deer are moving, but I'm thinking this year if I can, like, if I'm narrowing down on a deer in PA, he's an old buck in the mountains, and I think he just using small areas where I'm hoping I can get its trees to stand set, whether or a platform with a saddle to so I don't have to worry about putting that up because I do a lot of hunting before day, get in before light and get set up. And I'm hoping to be able to have a spot ready for that situation. But I think also it's just all like I just feel like every year with the beginning of the season, like I have a plan where I want to hunt, and it just falls apart. The wheels come off just because of what the mass might not be as good in this area, or there's too
Yeah.
many hunters, or EHD, and it's like
You
I
got to
didn't kill it.
pivot.
Yeah, I didn't kill a deer until November 17th this year, and I thought I was going to shoot one or two in October. So it's always, reading in my journal what I need to do, and I tend to hunt the same areas and just keep refining those areas. As for that buck I'm talking about in Pennsylvania, and I always throw in like maybe a new state or a new piece of public, because that's always, I think that's the best part, is trying to figure them out. And then once you figure them out, it's a waiting game, and to shoot them. But yeah, I think after last year, um, try to be a little better on my setup. I'm pretty good as far as not burning myself out. That was things I did um, a couple years back. Just I wanted to kill a deer, maybe in a few states, and sometimes you push yourself. And I talk about like sprinting. Like you can't sprint for hundreds of yards. Like I feel like it's a short thing, like volume and intensity. You can be intense for a short while, like a guy like Andy May. I know he has, and I learned from him. Like I tried, even though I have more time to hunt than him, I try to like use his mindset where do a little more scouting. And like Andy says, he's in the woods just because he's hunting on 3 days. You don't see him scouting. So I just keep, because I think with a cameraman, sometimes in my head, like, gotta hunt, gotta hunt, gotta hunt, gotta get in a tree, gotta hunt. And it's not, and I always talk about hope hunting. And I don't want to hope. I want to know that when I'm hunting, I'm in the right spot. It's just a matter of time for that deer to walk by. So, yeah, I've learned to just scout more and hunt less, and I try to keep being better with that. And I've done better this year. Um, this is my third or fourth year with a cameraman, but early on it was just getting, and I would burn myself out just hunting too much. I think you need to put more time into your scouting and know the right times to hunt and know when to hunt and hunt. But yeah, be quieter, getting in a tree, hopefully get some more, stand locations. And that only entails knowing your deer better. As I said, know more, which in the off season right now is the best time to learn and prepare for next year. And it might take you a few years to, like this deer I'm thinking about here in PA. I first got him on camera, not this past summer, the summer before, and he's a big mature deer, but I didn't know. I didn't, yeah, he was a big deer, but I couldn't hunt him because I didn't know enough. So I kind of run cameras and learned a little bit about him while hunting other areas and other deer. And last year I knew a little more, but still he wasn't leaving enough sign for me, and kept hunting other deer. I harvested another deer. And here this year, I mean, this off season, um, man, I got some pieces of the puzzle. I'm knowing, and I feel like as he gets older, his areas that are I call safe zones, a safe area for him to live, is kind of just getting smaller. The human is his biggest predator. Coyotes aren't a big deal. So basically, he's just hiding from humans. And, without public land and big woods, and guys throughout archery, bear season, gun season, muzzle loader shed season, you're going to find these little nooks, which I call maybe safe zones, that they they really favor. But yeah, and like I said, um, write my notes down, and that's probably two of the things, is just, like I said, being quieter, maybe get some stats. Know, but it's always continuous. Know your animal better, your quarry. Um, just know more, and yeah, I mean that's probably it, Eric. So
So let me dig in a little bit more just on what you said around your journaling. How do you, as the season, is that more to look back at in, after the season as you prepare for the following season, or is that helping you actually in season?
no,
And if it is, how are you using it to help you in season?
I think it's for the following season.
Okay.
like when it's fresh in my mind, when I'm in the tree or just after a hunt, say it's November, I should have been here, or I need to go look at this spot next year. And that's only in one area, maybe one deer I'm hunting. So I put a little note in there. And then when I get into next year, whether it's preparing for next year or actually into November, it's usually both. Like preseason, I'll just have a time in like September when I'm starting to think deer. I'll just read through my journal, and I'll take notes on a separate maybe notepad that I usually write in, or in my phone. I got a notepad, places that I maybe want to check because maybe there was um, a buck that I was hunting, and there was a spot like I didn't know much about, and I wanted to go there. So that'll be there, and then I'll write like in my phone, places to set cameras for this upcoming year, at, and that's in conjunction with the things I need to be better at, whether it's being quiet, getting in the woods, or stuff like that. Like I find myself sometimes doing what you might call a rookie mistake, like I should have did this, but sometimes it's when the deer comes, and that's why we hunt, because of the buck fever. We all get it to some degree, and you don't think straight, I think. So there's little notes I put in for stuff like that. I'm kind of hard on myself. Like you should have been. A lot of it's like access and being quieter, and stuff like that. I think it's the biggest thing. Your
It's
equipment.
interesting though. I was, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
That's
but
right.
talking to Andy a few weeks ago, he said the same thing. He said as long as I've been hunting, that's something that as I look back at last season, that he said I've got it. Like I take that for granted, right? I just kind of move uh, very naturally because of all the things I've done forever, and I take for granted that maybe I'm making a little too much noise getting to the tree, or maybe I'm making a little too much noise, getting up the tree, hanging my sticks, whatever. So, like you said, you called it a rookie mistake, but I think it's also something that veterans can do just because they're so focused on the strategy of what they're trying to do that they sometimes forget the little things.
Yeah, and definitely like Andy. Like I talked to Andy, and I think Andy's a great hunter. I mean, like one of the best out there. But
Yeah, no
when you
question.
talk to him, he talks like, man, I got stuff to improve on. But that's what makes him a good hunter, because we're all, and
Yeah,
other
I
good
agree.
hunters I talk to, we're not, when you're at the top, there's nowhere to go. If you think you're the best, then
You're
you're,
probably not.
yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure because you can't get any better. If you like, then you're stopped. If you think you're the best, you're not going to, so I don't believe, like, yeah, I am. And I got so much, and it's nice to have a cameraman with another, like, I like taking a cameraman, someone that has some good woodsmanship that helps me, even because, like you said, when you're focused on a lot of stuff, you just maybe like have another opinion to just see the obvious stuff, which sometimes you get into too far into the cracks and crevices when you're trying to figure out a deer, that the obvious sometimes um, you need another opinion. So sometimes that's good to have another opinion, whether it is my cameraman, or Bo, or Bill Thompson, or someone I can call and send them a pin and tell, just like we all, none of us believe that we're the best, and we're just learning, and we're a student of these animals. Um, but yeah, and like I said, with like all the technology and all the equipment we take into the woods now can be noisy. And I think back of like when an Indian, he had bucks, or a mountain man had buckskin like clothes, and whether it's a rifle or whatever, just simple. And they're probably better hunters than we got. Like I feel like we have a bunch of crutches, like a bunch of, like, you got your rangefinder, you got your sight, you got your light, and you got all this grunt. Like it's like, wow, am I really that good when I need all this extra stuff to kill an animal? I think like if I'm good enough with my scouting and I know where I need to be, all I need is a bow and an arrow, really. If you can get to that point where you don't need all kind of stuff. So how good are we really?
Right. Now, you said, I think you just said a little bit ago that you just started mobile hunting the last 2 years. Is that right?
Well, no, I mean with the saddle setup, my bad. It was I've always
So you
had
just
like,
started saddle hunting.
yeah, so
Okay.
and with having another guy with me,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a whole new, because I used a climber, a lone wolf climbing stand. Like a lot of my, when
Mm-hmm.
I hunted like PA, West Virginia, Ohio, a lot of the trees allowed me to just, they were straight for climbers, until I went up to the Midwest or wherever, and the trees weren't that straight. But I used that a lot when I hunted myself. But then having a cameraman here in the last 3 years or so, I had to switch tactics. I couldn't use that anymore. So got into the saddle, and you know, I know when Bo showed me how to use it, I'm like, oh yeah, I got this, no big deal. And it was in the summertime, cars were driving by and it's windy, and then I go out in the woods before light, and you could hear a pin drop, and I'm like, whoa, boy, I'm kind of loud at this. But then it's already in season, so it's like, oh man.
Learn the
But
hard way, right?
yeah, so I think that's a huge thing, is getting in undetected.
Yeah. Um, you were talking a little bit about scouting, and I did want to ask you, and this is not a commercial, right? So I just want to preface by saying, like, Spartan Forge doesn't sponsor this podcast or anything, but I have gotten to know Bill. I trialed Spartan Forge in the off season. I still kept Onyx, right? Because that was my crutch. And it does take a little, like, I think the thing that I hear from people is, and it's kind of, I mean, it's a little bit of a different operating system, so you have to get used to the fact that it doesn't work the same way. But there are a lot of features in there that are very unique. So you kind of mentioned Bill a couple times. As you're scouting, how do you leverage that app differently than, like, I don't know if you used Onyx before, or HuntStand or HuntWise or whatever, but what is what does that app give you differently than the other ones did, and why do you use it? And how do you, and I'll ask a follow-up question after that. I don't want to throw too many questions in there, but why do you use that one versus the other ones, and how do you use it differently?
Well, first, Eric, I'm going to say it's kind of like you said, how you're used to this. I tell people it's like if you drove a Ford for 15 years, and then I tell you to get in this Chevy, man, this thing's awesome. And you get in and the wipers in the wrong spot, the lights are, I'm like, so it's just a matter of getting in a driver's seat. You already know how to drive. So it's just a matter of finding where the features are and being comfortable
Mm-hmm.
that way. I think that's the comparison. Now, I haven't had Onyx. That was my last app, and that's been, I don't know, 5 years. So I can't really, but I remember I want to see a lot of detail, because there's more to it than just, hey, because I'm always hunting public land, and it was just like a green blob. And I know there wasn't much detail. I know now on Spartan Forge, it kind of dilutes the green as you get in. You could see more, whether it's a thermal cover or down trees or whatever it may be. But so I've been with Spartan Forge now, that I really can't say much about the other apps. But so as far as scouting, I know we have on Spartan Forge, you can preset a few maps. We have options. If you're lucky enough that you have the UAV imagery, which is actual aerial photos, that's so costly it's not everywhere. I think Bill said just recently that he's going to work on getting more for the country, because you put a satellite image next to an aerial photo, and all the other mapping apps are satellite images. And then once you get in, it gets grainy really fast on a
Yep.
satellite compared to the aerial photo. So first thing I do is get in. If my area has UAV imagery, that that's going to see all kind of detail, deer trails even. So I do that first, and if not, and I don't preset maps, just because all the different areas I'm hunting, I don't know what you know what satellite image works the best. So I kind of just say I'm in New York scouting. First, I'll see if there's UAV imagery, aerial photos. Okay, I'll throw that out the window if there isn't. I'll go to Sat One, which now has historical images, and so you get a you get an option of that, and then Sat Two and Sat Three. So I'll start with 2D, stay on two dimensional, um, look over the area, see where they have roads on, stuff like that. And then what I'll do is I'll change it to LiDAR. And
I was gonna say that's the game changer on
yeah,
Spartan Forge. That LiDAR feature, like the stuff that you can see on there that you can't see on a regular image is insane.
yeah. So LiDAR is the big ticket item, and what's great is when I got to know Bill way back when, like I realized how serious of a hunter he was, hunting public land, mountain, like, and then you got the same guy with the intelligence from the military to build this app. So it's like he knows what we need. So yeah, the LiDAR, I'll go to that and then I'll put it on 3D imagery, and I'll pick out spots um, with the terrain. So you'll really see the change in terrain in 1 meter, change in terrain with the LiDAR. So you visually can, I call it an X-ray of the earth. So you can visually see that with your eyes, spin it around on 3D, and then click back to my go between LiDAR and whether it's UAV, if you don't have that, whatever, sat one, two, or three. So I kind of ingrain things in my head and drop pins. And I usually use like a green icon with a set of binoculars. I drop them. Them are for me, that means green means go, and binoculars means to look. Like I want to go scout, look at this area. So I'll drop those. And then as I have time to get to those areas, I'll turn them red. That stop. I mean, that means I already looked at the area. That's
Hmm.
kind of how I use it. I'll drop them green binoculars as a place I want to go to, and then once you get in there and boots on the ground, um, drop pins for the trail scrapes, whatever it may be, and I try to take a picture um, and upload that into my pin because if you see a heavy duty trail there now, or even a rub, and you go back in September, it might not look the same. So I know, a rub tree will grow, and it might not even look like the tree that was rubbed back in the spring. So definitely upload photos, and even you got an option for your notes. Write a note like trail leading to bedding or whatever it may be. It's just to have all that. And I used to not put that many pictures, upload pictures or notes. But then, you start getting so many pins in an area and you see a pin and it's the dates populate. I'm like, I was just this morning looking at what was I doing there? When was that? So I starting to put more notes in so I can look back in years and say, oh, okay, I remember this. So
Yeah. So that leads me into kind of a follow up question to something you said earlier, and that's that you're scouting more, hunting less. And another thing that I want to do is I'm going to kind of ask you about, and I know you travel a lot, so I want to get your take on, top two or three things that you look for depending on specific areas of the country that you're hunting when you go scout. But just to start off, can you talk a little bit about your change in mindset from the hunt all the time mindset to, because I know you're scouting a lot in season too. I mean, I've just in kind of looking at the way you hunt and watching those things, when you go travel, I know you're scouting, for a day or sometimes, half a day, day and a half, whatever, when you land somewhere before you ever start hunting. So can you talk about the shift in mindset there and what you've seen different in terms of your outcomes since you started doing that?
yeah, definitely. It, when I was younger, I would think, man, we got to hunt, and I was afraid of spooking deer. Like, and so I would sit in an area that was maybe mediocre, just because I didn't want to get in too deep in and explore. And so, yeah, fast forward to like I did some, like I said, with originally having a cameraman, just not doing as much scouting, just figuring we're not, especially when you got someone following you. It's like, man, I feel like an idiot. I'm walking around all the time. We should, he's probably thinking, what's this guy doing? We're not even hunting much. So I would just sometimes get in a tree, but as I got into the tree, I was like, this, I'm hope hunting. I'm hoping a deer comes by. This isn't good. So yeah, I mean, there's even times recently that when I get to a state, um, sometimes if it's depending on what time I get there, I can go. I don't care if it's, you know an hour before dark, I'll just possibly hike through the woods and see where the deer are, whether it's tracks or sign, fresh sign, or even bumping deer. Because you figure they're going to be, especially on public land that's hunted, the deer are going to see their main. A lot of the deer are going to be where humans aren't. They're going to know these areas, and if you just put some boots on the ground, it might be a matter of just hiking right through the area and knowing it and getting into it. But also, I do a lot at night, Eric. I'll go out after dark, and that's I don't use. I limited myself to one cell cam per state this year, and I didn't end up even using any. They were older, and I didn't want to mess with them. And I think I challenge myself because I think I'm getting better as a hunter, and I feel like that's um, not challenging me by using cell cameras. So like even this year, I'll just use one per state. But yeah, sometimes I'll get to a spot at dark. Usually I'll have not like usually up through November, wherever I'm hunting up, I usually have cameras already soaking. And sometimes I'll get there and at nighttime I'll go in at night and pull those cameras so I can make a game plan for the next day. So that's I already have usually have my spring scouting done and my read my maps and made a trip earlier in the fall to drop cameras. And I get there and the first thing I do is maybe get a dozen cameras. I might be out till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night or whatever it might be to get fresh intel on the area. And I do like evaluate the situation. I put cameras where I want to know what's going on, and then I evaluate: is this a camera I can get during the daytime? Am I going to spook stuff? Um, so if it's like near a road, a crossing, or maybe where they're feeding at night, I'll grab some of those cameras during the day. But then there's the ones in maybe up on a mountain where the buck might be bedding. You got a lot of leaf litter. I'll go in after dark and grab those cameras. But also just in season scouting, besides doing that, getting to an area, if I don't feel like I have the odds in my favor and I don't know, or if I don't know where all the mast crop might be in the fall, I- I'll hike. No, I mean, I'll just hike throughout the day, especially like when you're into October. Um, I see where the deer are feeding and I try to draw conclusions as to where maybe they're bedding. If you bump a deer, you bump a deer. It's not a huge ordeal. They're there because it's a safe area. But I think the biggest thing is once you know enough and you got the odds in your favor of having a chance of killing a deer, that's the time to hunt. So like I evaluate myself when I get to an area. Um,
Do you ever go scout an area at night? I know you're out at night sometimes putting out cameras, but do you ever scout at night
yeah,
just to
usually
see?
I'll grab a camera and I'll once I grab the camera, sometimes I'll take a different route out of the woods to check an
Hmm.
area, whether it's for acorns. Yeah, but definitely I'll check. But it's like in conjunction with getting my cameras. So yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It's like grabbing a camera and seeing what's. I'll check it while I'm in the woods. I always check them while I'm in the woods and go from there. Well, let me go up on this ridge and check for acorns here and that. So that's a huge help, especially when you're trying to hunt several states. I need to get as much intel as I can. So I don't have, so yeah, I'll get them at night. And then I have maybe a midday. Maybe I will do a morning hunt if it's like earlier in the fall. And then scout, man, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know where I want to hunt. I know this year I was in Ohio and it was warm in October. And I hunt in public land, some rugged areas, and it was in the 70s. And I think, man, the one evening, almost shot one. He was at 30 yards. He caught us in a tree. The next evening, I went to a or the yeah. And the next evening, I had a buck come out of the thicket close by, and then the next time, I mean, I was on him, but it was a matter of some of it was, not hoping, knowing, and the one area we got and checked the camera. We were planning. We thought there was acorns. There was a deer in the area that we wanted to hunt, and he hasn't been there for 10 days. And it's an hour and a 2 hours before dark. And I said to my cameraman, I said, "Hey, I could hike." I said, "We could hike through the woods a mile. I know of an area where there was a buck I was hunting 2 years ago. Heavy leaf litter, crunchy, but it was a bowl, and we got set up um, on the leeward ridge and just snuck up to that ridge to look down in that bowl. So we were sweating our balls off, but it's kind of crazy, really. Like it was dead calm, crunchy leaves. People were like I walked up through woods that when you get to know these mature animals, these mature bucks, they're in these spots that are safe for them. And I walked, damn near a mile through these open woods. And someone, I passed tree stands and this and that. And I said, man, this is nowhere where I want to be at 70 degrees on October, say it was 12th. And I need to be tight. He's going to be down low near water. And I said, I know of an area, it's going to take them 45 minutes to an hour to get there. So we'll have an half hour or so to hunt. And that buck was there. Like he come in after dark and we were getting up to leave and he snorted. But then the next day I went to another spot and we got in a tree and daylight and this buck snuck in. And he was a shooter buck too. So man, like I feel like a lot of like these mature deer have their safe areas. They're not, I think you just kind of know where these areas are that they're going to be. They need cover. They're on a fringe of a lot of hunters coming in. And so that's on their mind. Breeding's coming, but you take a 4 or 5 year old deer that survives through a hunting pressure. Um, he knows it's that time. Guys are going to start coming in the woods, and he's not just going to be willy nilly. He's going to need that cover in the wind, and I think it's just experience of being in the woods of where they're going to be and not waste. I'm trying not to wait. So I was like, we did good. Like we didn't kill, but there was almost four chances in like 4 or 5 days in a row. So public that I almost was right there. Almost killed a deer, but being really, um, and I'm being, how do I want to say it? I'm being really intrusive, like really, um,
You're getting
getting
on
where I
top of
need to
them.
get. Yeah, I got to get to where I need, no matter if I blow, but then again,
And you said earlier that you're hunting really close to bedding most of the time, right?
yeah, in even in areas, I feel like some of these, yeah, definitely these mature deer. When you get into November, some of these areas that are pressured, if there's an old buck there, they're not dumb, man. They're going to be in some cover. I feel like there's a day in their life that they're stupid, like a 24-hour period that you might see them running. And you're talking about the whole hunt season of trying to match your hunting up with that day to find him in the middle of the open woods chasing does. And then that's even a difficult. You talk to people that are hunting and see it. Oh, I seen him running, And so I feel most of the time, even in the November, I'm into some cover somewhere, usually a midday hunt, but in some man, they still have their senses about them. I feel like these older deer are more worried about surviving. I think that comes first before breeding. And if that entails them sticking to some cover and go, like I think a lot of them go out at night and find their does, or like this one deer that I'm looking for in PA, like he has hardly any rubs. He's a big, massive 8 point in the 150 class range, maybe more. And there's hardly any scrapes, any rubs, and there's some does on top of the mountain. I think he just lives down on the lower areas of the mountain, and there's the doe population, and all the deer know it. Like he's right there with them deer. They know he exists. That he doesn't have to go. But there's other situations where bucks, the population is spread out through the whole mountains to where they have to travel to hit scrapes and that. Well, I find situations where these deer got this pocket of deer that he kind of satellites and watches over, and they know he's there, and he knows they're where they're at, and he just like when they at nighttime you go up and check them out and this and that, but he don't. you don't have to do all that scraping and stuff. So it makes it hard to hunt a deer like that. And like I have a shed from last year, and there's hardly you could tell on his horn that he didn't even do a lot of rubbing last year. So
That's why he's alive.
yeah, you
Because
don't need.
he knows how to hide and he doesn't leave a whole lot of, doesn't leave a trace of where he's been.
Yeah, but I think like so another thing I did here in the off season when I had snow, I'd make just huge circles out in the forest, um, kind of like an oval. I'd just park and I'd go out around maybe 4 or 5 miles to whatever it might be, just to find um, a track of a good deer, and then that's starting point for shed season.
What's super interesting is a couple of things that you just said. So I had Cody Rich on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he's from Montana, big elk hunter. But a lot of the stuff that you're doing is similar to what a lot of guys do out west, like going out at night. Like that's one of the things that the really good hunters out west will say is, hey, if they can't get on a bull during the day, they're out at night because they're vocalizing at night. Well, deer are moving at night, right? So you got a chance to jump something or see something more in the evening. And then the perimeter thing that you just brought up too, that was something that he talked about was he'll get, on the top third of a ridge line, in a big drainage, and he'll just walk the entire perimeter of it, just like you're doing from a scouting perspective, which that kind of leads me to where I wanted to go next with you was since you're traveling, I want to find out from you as you go into specific types of terrain features within different states, what are the top couple things that you're looking for? So as people, are listening to this, people who may be new to traveling or who have been traveling for a while but aren't having a ton of success when they move into a new location, what do those things look like? So I'm going to kind of walk you through like a few different scenarios: timber, ag country, hill country, plains, that kind of stuff. So let's start with with hill country because you're a PA native. That's something that you're used to. But if somebody was coming in, whether they're coming from the south or they're coming from the Midwest and they're used to a lot of ag and a lot of flatter land, and they're coming in to hunt hill country for the first time or to scout it, what would be the top, couple things that you would be telling them? Hey, here's what you should be doing as you come in to scout and try to hunt hill country.
Yeah, I think just like some of the highlights would be. I mean, there's every situation is different, but I would find like on Spartan Forge you have historical wind data, and I would see what the wind, the historical wind is. Say you're going to be hunting October. Check back, see, and usually a lot of my areas are west southwest, so we're going to look for the leeward. Um, the leeward sides or the downwind, like the bigger deer or I tend them to find them the furthest downwind. Um, so even this deer I'm talking about, he's the furthest downwind. He could smell everything up on the mountain or up the drainage.
So when you say the furthest downwind, do you mean further down the ridge, or do you mean like on like fingers off the ridge, or what specifically, or is it both?
Yeah, both. Like if it's a drainage,
Mm-hmm.
like I used to look at a drainage with some cover up through it, say some thermal cover, and like say this drainage is a mile long, and I'm like, man, he could be anywhere in this drainage. Like halfway up, there's a trail crossing, there's drainage, and some thermal cover, some blowdowns, and like you can get like I tend to find that he's not in the middle like of the drainage, like halfway up from say the bottom. Say there's a road at the bottom and there's a drain going up. Say
Mm-hmm.
that drain ties into another bigger tributary. So like I find him lower, like to smell everything. Like he
Lower
wants to
third
know.
or something like that.
Yeah, like the lower, wherever it may be, to smell like this buck I'm talking about. The rest there's roads on top, and the rest of the deer are living up on the mountain, and there's good cover and food, and that's where the population is. But like I said, he's going to stay down and smell all that. He's going to stay lower in the drainage, lower, and um, a low. Even I look at drainages that go up a mountain. I say there's maybe a north-south ridge, and you have some drainages that fall off to the west. Like I find the lowest one, the deepest one. 'Cause that's the one that's going to hold the most scent. He's going to be more bang for your buck. Like he's going to be checking for scent in them low points. But also, like I said, also leeward. Say it's a north slope and you have a southwest wind. So that north wind is where he's going to be, especially if down below him there's some vast country or out, and he's going to start. I always say start his day, but like the start of his day might be right before dark, to where he's starting downwind and he's going to work his way up to maybe smell does or find food. So leeward downwind type situations like that is what I look for. Um,
And in a situation like that is, if you're thinking about how you're going to hunt that deer, you know, obviously you've got to think about thermals because they're going to fall, in the evening. They're going to be falling still in the morning, rising as things warm up. Do you try to hunt them traveling up towards a food source or towards a doe bedding area or something like that during the rut? Is that how you like in terms of the way you would play that wind? Because obviously, the deeper you get down in that drainage, the more the wind is going to swirl, and the more of an advantage that gives him. So, is there ever a situation where you are potentially thinking about hunting him from the bottom up? Or are you always trying to catch him on a travel route, moving up the drainage?
so I think when a deer, say he's on a leeward, say it's a north slope, and you got a
Mm-hmm.
south or southwest wind that's falling down there, and it might be a shady, cool area. It might drop most of the day, depending on if it's cloudy, if it's how big this drain. Thermals can be tricky, but I've seen north slopes with a lot of foliage pull most of the day, especially if you have a hot south slope that's really, it's like whatever one action has another reaction. It might come up the south and go down all day, depending on what the wind is. But for the most part, like you said, the thermals and the wind's going to be dropping down, and he's when he starts his day, he's going to go up. And I feel like when the longer a mature deer goes without being pressured by a human, the more he lets his guard down. But for the most part, you get into hunting season, you're hunting public land. Say that top has does or it has food. Maybe it's there's mast crop acorns on that ridge. Most of the time, he's going to set himself up to smell that when he's going to enter that top. So that's tough to overcome his nose. So usually, I'll try to get like a lot of those situations. I'll come up from the bottom way before light to catch him because he has to get down to that north slope, down in elevation from a top, and I try to. It's usually, and it depends on the other thing I want to talk about is where are the roads, where's access for humans, and if you have that north slope and say there's a drainage, say he's just laying on that north slope somewhere, um, to say that drainage goes, there's not a road around like for a long way, and say it's October, so he's pretty certain that you know below him, down near the drain, or when the thermals pull down, or whatever it may be, that's a safe area for him to retreat to. And he say there's roads, one road or a hiking trail on top, but it has oaks in it. That's where most likely he's going to encounter a human. Say as long as he's been living on this north slope, because no one has ever come up from the bottom. It's kind of crazy, like they're going to come from the trailhead or the road, and so I and that's why I talk about um like being like intense, like you can't do it. You might have to maybe go in before light. Say you got a half hour, 40-minute drive, and then you got to hike. So you're going to be the crazy one that comes up from the bottom and catch him, you know, doing what he wouldn't think most humans do. So you got to do the different thing. So yeah, I'll come up from the bottom, but it's not going to be a hunt that you're going to be able to do day in and day out, just because, man, it's tough. You got to and you got to do everything right. And sometimes you're walking a tightrope. Like, man, like, oh, another time this year. So I saw the deer in Ohio, and he caught us in a tree. I said, I think he's bedding down near that drain. I said, we'll get in there before light. And it took us almost 2 hour and a half to walk that whole distance to come in the back up the drain and get to where we thought he was bedding. And we, like, it wasn't even light, and he was already, and he's big, deep, loud snort. He was already there. I was like, well, we ruined this. So we had left. I think we hunted for an hour and we left. But to get up at maybe 4 in the morning and hike that whole way, and you're sweating, and to do everything, it's taxing. I mean, just like, not so much physically, but mentally. It's tough. And then getting up in a tree, two guys, not having your equipment, um, you know, loud and make noise, because maybe he is further up the hill and he's feeding, and he hears a little metal noise like a little tink or something. Well, the whole hunt's done for. So, but yeah, you got to do something unorthodox, and like come in from the area that he does not expect humans coming from. So that's what I usually do. But like I said, it's not something you're going to do day in and day out.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
just
sense.
really taxing. So, but I think the next thing is parking. Where, like, access, human access. Where are they coming from? So I was helping a guy e-scout last week, and man, he had this drain that went up the east side of the mountain, and man, he had a big deer living there all the time, on his trail camera. And when he hunted it, he said, I hunted. It seems like he's there during a week. I said, when you hunting? He said, on a weekend. And you don't see him? I said, man, he lives there. I said, look at your camera pictures. He's there. He showed me. He's there all the time. I said, where do you park? He said, he was parking 200 yards from, I mean, I said, you can't
Yeah,
park
you're.
there.
Yeah, no.
I said, you're going to have to hunt during a week, and you're going to have to park a mile away, and you're going to have to walk all the way up there. I said, maybe get where I said, man, you got a good setup. It was a good spot for archery. Then gun hunters blew it up, and he went in this weekend. I just talked to him, and he don't have that deer on camera, but gun season mess. So it might be just an early season spot. I said, he's living near that road. I said, oh, look, we follow that drainage to the top of the ridge. I said, there was a gated road that was. He's like, nobody comes in from up there. I said, there, you just answered your question. I mean, but that he knows where you're parking and know where you just gave yourself some input. That's where the danger is, on that road. But up on that top, nobody's coming. So basically, he had the thermals coming down this drain, and he was laying there and listening to the road. So I said, man, all you got to do is just park somewhere else next year. I think you could probably have some luck at that deer. So people don't really think about that. I think that's a huge thing. Deer are aware of where, like I say about knowing, know more. That's what they want. They want to know all this stuff. And I always do the analogy is where, like, if someone was wanting to kill you, and they knew where you lived, and you heard that they were going to come after you today, well, would you be hiding in your closet? No, you'd be looking out your window with your gun. Like, you want to know when he's coming and when he's going to show up and where he's coming from. Oh, he's coming, here he comes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think deer are a lot like that, that they're not going way back in the woods and not know where danger is coming from. They'd rather have that area way back in the woods that they can retreat to, you know. But they want to have a lookout, whether it's their ears, their eyes, or their nose of the human, their predator, the one that's coming to kill them, basically. So,
Yeah. So that's a good point. That brings me to the next, um, you know, terrain area. So let's talk about ag country, Midwest. Whether you're talking Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Ohio, places, Northern Ohio, places like that. Which, Andy May made a good point when I was talking to him. Was everyone thinks ag country is easy, but there's food sources everywhere. There's not a ton of timber. It's got its own set of challenges. So when you scout ag country, what are the unique features that you're looking for in terms of something that sets an area apart that you might think would hold big deer, and then how do you approach that from a scouting standpoint?
well, most of my public land hunting is, um, I mean, most of that public land, I want to look for. I want to find where there's food in the timber, basically acorns. So that's going to help me have more deer living in the timber. But I think, um, and I know some of the Midwest areas, like you said, there's more ag. It's broken up as far as the timber. It can be difficult because it'll hold more deer because of the ag. I mean, that's where they're feeding, but the forest could have more deer, and I call it like a domino effect. If you go on one end, boom, 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 it's just the deer are going out the other end. So that could
Mm-hmm.
be a challenge, I
That's
think.
right.
And I take that into consideration a lot. Is like these bucks will use the rest of the deer. Like he might be on the one little finger ridge, and he got does. He knows over here, and he's in the middle, and he's just protected by these deer. So like, um, I think that's makes it difficult. And in those situations, I'll get into an area like that way before light. Um, but I think the biggest thing is the hunting pressure and access. Where are people coming in, and always the down? Where's the downwind? Or the wind. I'll look at the historical wind, and it's not. You don't have the swirling winds like you would maybe in eastern areas, but the downwind, he's going to be smelling where the does are, where um, the parking spot is, or where guys are coming in. But I you don't always know where deer are going to be. I mean, you don't always know where the deer you're wanting to kill. There might be 1,000-acre piece of public. There might be a good deer in there. Or, maybe it's just a small 40 or 80 piece. There might be. You don't always know which one's going to hold a good deer, but I think just being in some of the Midwestern states, there's usually a decent one just in general with enough private around that they'll move on and off of public. So sometimes when I go to the Midwest, I don't always have cameras. I just kind of know that there are good deer around. But I think the biggest thing is the hunting pressure, and looking back in the past, I mean, I did a lot of. I tend to stay like in the eastern side of the country here, like PA and Ohio or New York, West Virginia, or whatever it may be, through the first 2 weeks of November, because I can get to these states fairly quick, and then I'll maybe go to the Midwest, or like this year I went to North Dakota, and then Illinois or Iowa late season. So I don't always have intel. Sometimes I use the snow. I hope there's a snowstorm. This year I went to Illinois, and I just waited for a snowstorm. And it was down for 5 days. So I just looked for tracks and found where there was big deer living. And I should have shot one my first hour into the tree. Um,
So if you've never been there before and you're going into an area like that in the Midwest, what are you looking for on on your app? Obviously, there's ag everywhere. Are you looking for mostly bed? Like, are you looking for bedding somewhere inside of the timber? Or I think that's one of the things that people sometimes will struggle with is because there's ag everywhere. Where what sets something apart? So when you're looking at that and trying to decide where you're going to go, if it's not an area you've been to before, what are some key terrain features that you're looking for in ag country that you think jump out at you?
I think with terrain features, like they say, the crow's foot to three fingers. I think any type of terrain like that will help a deer survive and or escape. So that's or downwind, or like maybe east facing finger if your majority of your wind's out of the west. But I think there's a lot of that happening in the Midwest. So I think that's not what I'm looking for so much. I think the biggest thing, because you have, to me, that would be stagnant. There's a lot of fingers and a lot of drainage and a lot of up and down like this in the forest. I think trying to figure out where the pressure is the biggest thing to
So
me.
really, really hunting off the pressure
Yeah,
is kind of
because
the recurring theme.
it's pretty much, there are some like cedared areas that are thicker. But like I said, with that they could. There's not a ton of cover in the Midwest, I would think, in some days like Illinois, I think in Illinois, Iowa, CRP, maybe some cedar areas. But like I said, with if you have a high deer population, they don't need the cover. They can use these other deer to help them know when pressure's coming. But pressure, I think, is the main thing I'm trying to figure out. Whether the parking spot is the leaves have been matted down, guys been parking, there's trash around the parking spot. Um, so knowing where people are accessing, I think that's way more important because as far as terrain, I think a lot of it, boots on the ground, and you would have to go check. And I think you're going to find what you want in the areas that humans aren't in. So
That's a
I,
great point.
I think
That's
that's
I
the
think yeah.
biggest thing because I mean, there's them terrain features. They happen pretty much everywhere out there, or it could be just a flat. If you take that terrain feature that looks good, the crow's foot, and there's 10 guys been through there, and you just take an open piece of flat woods with nothing. I mean, if nobody ever goes in it, well, that's where the deer are going to be because they know that they're not bothered. The longer uh, time goes by without them being bothered, that's where they're going to gravitate to. So I think finding the pressure, and I've done things in the Midwest where if I would get there, like even at like 4 o'clock, I would, like I said, I do a big loop through the woods, like prime time when deer might be moving. I see where deer are, maybe after a rain, see tracks, bump deer, see where guys' stands are. Where like that's a huge help if you don't have cameras on that. But also, I like in the December, January, I'm wanting snow. I'll just see. You can see. So I went to Illinois, and there was 5 to 7 days of snow, but been on the ground before I got there, and it told me where hunters weren't. It might even been 10 days of snow. So here we go. There's nobody in here hunting. Um, and I went in at night and checked an area. I did that. Just looking for big tracks. Like and you're talking January when the deer are not moving as much. So you see a lot of big tracks of this deer's here, hung a
Mm-hmm.
stand. But we went to an area, man, it was like -5 degrees. And I went in and there wasn't any big tracks. So the following day, I just got on the road and started driving different areas and found a heavy crossing on the road and big buck tracks. And man, we hunted there. I mean, I got in a tree at one or two, and the deer I should have shot come to 10 yards. And I was like up in a tree looking at him, and I only had 3 days to hunt. And I'm like, I don't know if that's what I want to shoot. And then he ran out to 35. And when he's going away, I'm like, man, I should be shooting this deer. I got a cameraman over my shoulder, and I got 2.5 days to hunt, and it cost me, I don't know, $1,800. I'm like, I need to be getting a kill. So I shot the deer, ended up ducking a string, and it wasn't a lethal shot, but I talked to a guy. I said that was the biggest deer in the area on that piece of public. You should have been shooting him at 10 yards, but I had luck there. I mean, it should have
That
panned
was
out.
Ohio,
That was Illinois.
Illinois. I had the
Yeah,
same thing happen to me in first week of January in Ohio. I went. It was 8 degrees. I was up in a tree. It was last light. The freaking snow was blowing like a fiend, and I had one. Finally, had a shooter come in at about 30 yards, and he jumped the string on me.
yeah, I
It's the
know.
only
And
shot I got the whole hunt.
I talk about rookie mistakes. Like he was at 35, and I held my 30-yard pin high for a 35-yard shot, and he ducked. I'm like, I know this. This is why am I doing that? I should have been having my 30 right on his heart, and he would have, you know. But he,
Yeah, I did the exact same thing. I don't even know why. Like, I actually made myself do that during the season when I was training. I was shooting low all the time,
yeah,
and for one reason or another, I made myself start pushing my pin up a little bit because I had had a deer jump. I had hit a deer the previous year that I thought was going to jump the string, and I put it right under his brisket, like barely under his brisket. So I had actually made myself push my pin up a little during the season, and then when I finally got a good shot on one, he jumped it on me. So
yeah.
No, I'm never making that mistake again. I'm going back down to the bottom third.
Yeah, that's where I always said to aim, and for some reason in a moment, well, I didn't have it range too. I don't think because when you run out there, I was guessing, so maybe that didn't help me out, So
He was
I
he
went,
was quartering away pretty hard too, wasn't he?
yeah,
Yeah, like he wasn't. That wasn't like a dead shot. Like I think I saw that one on film, and he was quartering away a good bit, which makes
yeah,
it a lot harder.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, we got some footage of it. It was, and I shouldn't, but I think it's them rookie mistakes I talk about, and seeing the deer, like I should have shot the deer at 10 yards. Sometimes you're not ready, and the deer come, and I'm only in the tree for an hour, and maybe I'm hoping there's a bigger deer coming, and that's hunting though, I guess.
Yeah, that's just you deciding what you want to shoot. But I know what you're saying. So, do you ever get to I know there's a lot of timber in PA, but do you ever get to more like Michigan, Wisconsin, big like tons and tons of timber that's not super, rolly or hilly? Just do you ever hunt any of that kind of stuff?
Well, actually, the area I hunt in PA
Mm-hmm.
is like the plateaus of the Allegheny National Forest, and it's pretty a lot of flat, big forested area, which makes it really difficult. I try to find terrain, but
That
in
that was
these,
actually going to be my question then. So you're leading me into this. If somebody's going to go scout, whether it's Michigan or that part of PA or Wisconsin, and they're not in a really hilly area, it's pretty flat, but just really expansive timber that
yeah,
kind of all looks the same. Couple tips for scouting that and trying to get yourself in a position to set up for a good hunt.
look at the historical wind again and see where the wind blows. The deer, say it's a southwest, it's going to be if you're high up, like big flats, it's going to be consistent, and the deer are going to live based off of that. See where the hunting pressure is, see where the roads are. The deer chances are going to be downwind, the mature deer that you're looking for. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, you can like you can get caught up in rubs and scrape and trails and all kind of stuff that could be really insignificant, especially if it's made at night on these public lands. Um, where's the down? And you like the deer I'm looking for. There's not much scraping and rubbing, so
And when
um,
you say find the down, you're saying around a bedding area, right? I mean, because
um,
obviously they could be downwind in a lot of
down
different places, but you're talking more downwind near a bedding area.
downwind of maybe other deer, does. When you read your maps, like a lot of now guys, everybody has a mapping app, and everybody there's so much info out there to
And are you trying to find a bedding area that would be downwind from like from those from pressure from that kind of stuff? You're trying to get close to a bedding area that's downwind from those other things that would be pushing that way, or are you just
well,
saying
I think
downwind from that stuff in general?
downwind of maybe roads, parking lots, so deer, like a mature deer,
Pressure.
knows where the pressure's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Downwind of the majority of the deer that are living now. I'm talking 5+ year old animals that I'm looking for. So, where the bulk you see does feeding and maybe on that big a flat, like he's the mature deer is going to be downwind of, like a lot of guys now can read maps. They know what to look for. You got a good aerial photo on Spartan Forge or whatever sat image you got. It shows your clear cuts. Say there are some old cuts scattered in there, or um, you're like, man, this is a good area for deer. Like a deer, like when you look at, like I always say, if you take a picture, like you don't want your subject to be right in the middle. You want a lot happening in your photograph to make it attractive. Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
when you look at your map, when I'm looking at my map on Spartan Forge, I want a lot happening, whether it is terrain in this situation, no terrain, maybe an old cut, maybe some pines. Um,
A lot of different features coming together,
yeah, like a lot, like the deer,
meeting each other.
they need, they're like, I remember like every 7 years you want to, like you got different age class of force. Like at some point, chances are it's been cut, you know, a variety of trees. Maybe it's oaks, um, maples, some saplings, some areas where sunlight comes in. So you can find on a map these areas that are, and a lot of guys are going to these areas and look, this is where you're going to find the rubs, the scrapes. This is all good. But guess what? That's where all the hunters are going to be. So yeah, you're going to find the bulk of the like deer living there, the does, the yearlings, the 2-year-olds, like the community. But the guy we're hunting lives on the outskirts of town, and that's where he's comfortable. He'll come, he don't come to town much, so he's downwind of, he's going to be downwind. Like that's where, but it's hard to not. And then again, you got to evaluate that situation. Maybe you do find that area that has everything in it and there's nobody hunting it. Well, chances are he's going to be hanging out right there in town. But you get the times where you see stands and cameras, it's like, well, and you got a 6-year-old deer you're after. Like he already knows this gig. Like I don't even hunt those areas. Um, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
it does change as time goes on because I found those areas. I found an area that was like an older cut. I saw monster buck rubs in it, and I saw the buck living. I saw him 3 times. It was in October, mid to late October. Almost got a shot at him, and left cameras there. Gun season came, and I had him the last day of gun season. And guys, it was pretty wild. I had 2 cameras, one facing this way and one about 50 yards facing that way. And I had guys like putting it was wild. I had one guy walk in front of this camera and like simultaneously another guy. So they were driving. And what was weird, Eric, I had that buck 1 minute before running. It was like a deer running. And my camera took a picture and I zoomed in. I said, "That's my buck." And then the next minute there was these guys. I said, it was pretty wild that I got that story out of 2 cameras. The guys pushed and essentially he made it, I'd say, through that year. But the following year, he moved out of there. There was hunting pressure. And I actually thought the following year, I said, I'll kill him here. I kind of know this old cut and where he likes to hang out. And the following year, I went in there,
Gone.
no rubs, no nothing. He had significant rubs all through this cut. And I guess them guys saw it when they were putting the drives on. So the following year, I think there was a September October muzzleloader hunt that I was trying to bow hunt. And there was hardly any rubs, any sign of that buck. Guys would come through the woods, and I'm like, huh. And I'm like, I didn't hunt there. Like I found that deer 2 years later, about a mile away, where he moved to. But I gave up on that spot. And I think that next year, and then the following year that I just gave up on that spot. I told my buddy, I said, there was guys in there last year. I said, you can go hunt it. Well, them guys moved out too because they didn't see the sign that that buck was leaving. So the following year, then again, nobody's in there, so you got to keep up with the hunters also, the pressure. That's the big thing. So my buddy, he hit a big deer. Like, yeah, he said, there's big bucks all over. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I said, you ain't seen no hunters? He said, no, ain't nobody hunting here. So you got to like know, and it's like
That's
this
the
with
scout. That's the scouting thing again.
the hunting pressure as it goes. You got to go with it. So I find myself in the same areas in these few states here near home, just because I'm refining them now, and I will hit like Illinois was a new area this year, North Dakota, um, but I find myself just refining these areas and knowing them better and checking all these areas. See, maybe there's a logging activity that took place this summer, or like that situation, maybe the hunting pressure. So I'm like aware of what can change, and it always does. This buck deer die off, so other bucks move in. So like one area could be totally different the next year than the previous year. So it's a whole new, it's like a whole new deck. It's a fresh deck. Like we got to start it. So I find myself going to these areas again and again, year after year, and hunting them and reevaluating them and tweaking them a little bit. But what's nice is I don't have to. It's almost like just like knock the tops off. Like I don't have to dive in and scout
Yeah.
the whole property. So now that they having so many years in the forest, that I could go to areas that I've been in the past and I already have like an understanding of what's going on in the area, and I could just go kind of glaze over it and maybe drop a few cameras or just scout. So that helps being spending so much time in the woods over the last 30 years to in new different states and different areas that I already have some good intel of what's going on there.
Yeah, that's great insight. So last question. I've had you here for about an hour and 10 minutes. I appreciate your time. What's your favorite venison recipe? Favorite venison? Like, what do you, obviously not the entire recipe. I may get that from you and put it in the show notes, but what do you like to make, and what do you think of everything you prepare, what tastes the best, and how do you prepare it, in short?
So I got two. I mean, I've been doing a Mississippi pot roast with a deer neck lately. Like, I really like that. Um, Real simple, the crock pot. You throw a roast in there, and I think it's like ranch dress, a packet of ranch dressing, au jus sauce, a dry packet, and mild peppers and a stick of butter. And man, it's pretty awesome. I'll throw potatoes in, but usually just the back straps. And oh man, I guess this is more than one, but
No, it's all right.
what I,
Everyone's looking for good ways to make it. So,
the back straps are pretty,
yeah.
best slice of meat. But lately, what anymore? I mean, when I get a deer from the Midwest who's been eating grain,
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the steaks. I'll slice them pretty thin, about a quarter, 3/8. Season them quick, no matter what, and just hand fry them. I feel like some of the deer that are browsers don't have the best flavor as far as the deer that I or grain fed, soybean and corn, and even the deer I shot in Ohio was eating acorns and he was really fat, healthy. I think helped his. It was January, had a lot of fat on it, so I used his steaks, and man, they're so good. So yeah,
Those are good. I'm gonna have to try that Mississippi pot roast recipe. That sounds good.
yeah, it's simple. Look it up, Eric. It's like, man, it's really good. Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna give that one a shot. Well, thanks for being here, brother. We got a ton of great insight. You've been doing this a long time. You bring a lot to the table, and I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge with everybody.
yeah, thanks, Eric.
Thanks, brother. This section of the podcast is brought to you by Osseo Gear. With its one-of-a-kind Raptor camo pattern, Osseo blends seamlessly into the whitetail woods. Osseo's features and technology are designed to fit the unique needs of the bow hunter. With a lifetime warranty, Osseo is designed by bow hunters for bow hunters. Use the code DONOTGO20 to get 20% off any order from the Osseo Gear website. Visit them at osseogear.com. Elevate your game with Osseo.